Donald, welcome to Real Vision.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Ash.
Donald, we were talking a little bit offline. You do a lot of interesting things, many of them, in fact, most of them involving Web3. We're going to define that, talk a little bit more about that. But first, tell us about your journey into crypto.
Yeah, so I started in crypto actually working in the space around 2017. I first got involved learning about Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the major cryptocurrencies, and I came across a project called Elastos. And the founder, Rong Chen, had an interview that just caught my attention. He's super passionate about operating systems and what is becoming the Web3. And I was like, man, I need to get involved with this company as much as I can. So early 2018, they let me come in.
Let me just break in because I'm really curious. How do you define Web3? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. It's something that people are incredibly interested in. A lot of very interesting technical opportunities there. Tell us what your definition of Web3 is.
Okay. So Web3 is basically decentralized exchange of data. So that's taking the Web2 and adding a trust layer to it. And what we say at Elastos is that at its core, it's users first, then peer-to-peer. So that means that you are empowering the users, you're empowering communities, and then from there, you go into more of a peer-to-peer type decentralized engagement between different applications and platforms. But you really need to give the users their data, give the users access to their identity, and then you can do all these other things in Web3 like DeFi and NFTs and stuff like that. So it goes back to decentralized exchange of data, but empowering the users.
Yeah. So give us some examples of what that might look like, where we are today, and some of the things that are planned for Web3 in the future.
Yeah, so several examples. One primary component is decentralized identity. So you've heard of DIDs, decentralized identifiers. There's one that's available through Elastos. So that's a main component of Web3 because you need that verifying piece of your identity before you can access the different platforms and cross-platform functionality. So you have that. You have NFTs. You have smart contracts. You have DeFi, all these different components that kind of put together what is Web3. And you have to also incorporate the storage component. So Web3 is taking these different pieces and using it in a way where it's the users that are benefiting from the platforms. And it's not these siloed, centralized entities that are in complete control of your login, your password, your data, all of that. It's giving the power and the data back to the users, and then you can use these different components.
Yeah, and this is obviously a major shift from where we are today, a kind of fundamental re-engineering of the services that we use on the web.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is a major shift. But actually, we are starting to see some of these larger corporations. Let's just take, for example, Apple and Facebook. You see kind of like a rift between those two now because Apple's trying to play the more privacy-focused, where you can see when you use your applications, you have to give access, which is kind of it's a glimpse into what Web3 is, even though it's still at the control of a more centralized behemoth entity. But that's kind of where we're going. And you'll see things like the EU Commission's European Digital Identity Wallet. They're talking about providing an identity to the users. You've seen Microsoft recently get into the space with Microsoft Ion, DID. So we are kind of getting towards that. But really what we need to talk more about is how do we do that from the infrastructure level, which is what Elastos is doing, because you have to completely separate out the controlling party and give that control to the users. And that's what a lot of these different companies are missing out on. And to be honest, it's going to be a struggle and a battle because you're giving up the access to the data, which is providing the wealth to these large entities.
Yeah, very well said and an important point. So let's jump back in time a little bit before 2017. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the place where you were in 2017.
Yeah, so I actually going way back to college. I started as software in engineering at NC State University, and I kind of transitioned out of that into more of like a management type role. And I worked my way through my career running teams and a business. But I kind of played around with starting my own startup as well. And then really the technology has always been a key component of my passion, going back to early grade school, building computers and doing stuff like that. And I actually was very big into like gaming and stuff like that. And it's always kind of stayed with me along the path until blockchain came around in the crypto space, because I started to see how this technology can be used in these type of things like gaming and social aspect and community and the blockchain, verifying different pieces of data and learning over the years how important data really is. That's kind of was the tipping point where whenever I came to realize, okay, data could be used to generate some wealth. It could be used to generate some value. There's so much that can be done with it, where we've kind of learned in these past few years in the internet that it's not really, we don't have access to it as a user. And that kind of got me really passionate. Mix that in with learning about Rong's passion with Elastos and how he's had like 30 plus years of operating system experience. And he has this vision of what the Web3 can be. And that just kind of combined made me really want to hone in on this space, really want to hone on making the software easy for users to use and kind of educate people on that this could be a possibility. And I think that we're moving in that direction. So that's kind of what's gotten me excited about all of this.
Yeah, it really is an incredibly fascinating space. You mentioned data and the centrality of data in these ecosystems. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with WEF. This is the World Economic Forum, the group that sponsors the annual conference, annual meetings at Davos.
Yeah, so I represent Elastos and Tuum Technologies, the company that I founded at the World Economic Forum. And there's two task forces that I'm part of. And there's the Data for Common Purpose initiative, and then there's data intermediaries. And what we're trying to do is put together policies and educational materials around data and ethical use of data, and kind of talk to different enterprises, talk to governments, talk to nonprofits, kind of bring in a global view of understanding where's this data going to go? How are we going to transition into data exchange? And what parties are involved? Who's in control? How do we get individuals and users to participate? And so we got involved last year, towards the end of the year. And since then, we've started to help with some white papers. There's one that should be released soon where we've kind of given our insights on the user experience and how that should be. And then there's a much larger white paper that should come out later in this year for the DCPI portion of it. And that one's going to be a lot more in depth. And this isn't really pertaining to decentralized technologies, but more of how centralized technologies and groups maybe understand data. But I'm bringing in the potential of what blockchain and this whole space can do and provide, because I think that they need to understand that component where there needs to be some emphasis on the individual and the user. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems like we just recently had with COVID, where governments want you to let them know through your data that you got a vaccine or where you live and all this information, but people are very skeptical to give up that information to third parties and to government. So, okay, so how do you get that individuals to want to participate? And that's just a good example and a really easy one to think about, because how do we get to the next stage of getting more data, more information, more personalized information that other parties will want to exchange and use that information? And it's kind of, World Economic Forum it's a great group to be involved in because of the size and because of the different parties that are involved. But I think that our influence from what I can do through bringing a blockchain decentralized vision to it, I think that's really going to help to kind of keep it in line with not giving that control like it has been to a specific government or to a specific entity, and kind of have an open view of data and how we can exchange it.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.